You'll never amount to anything with your head in the clouds like that. Those words came from my own mother. I was 23, sitting at our kitchen table with my laptop, working on what would become a multi-million-dollar pitch. But she didn't see that. She saw a girl who wasted her life on the internet. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding in agreement. Your cousin Jennifer has a real job now, at a bank. With benefits. I closed my laptop slowly. The rejection stung worse than any business setback I'd ever faced. This wasn't the first time. For years, they'd called me a lazy dreamer every time I talked about my startup ideas, every time I chose coding over family dinners, every time I said no to their plan for my life. Maybe you should apply at Jennifer's bank, Mom added, her voice dripping with that particular kind of disappointment only mothers can master. I didn't respond. I just grabbed my laptop and walked to my room, their whispers following me down the hallway. I heard every word they thought I couldn't hear. She's going to end up alone and broke, Dad said. We failed her. That night, I made a decision. I stopped trying to explain my vision to people who refused to see it. 3 months later, I signed my first major contract. 6 months after that, my company had 20 employees. But my parents? They still introduced me as their daughter who does something with computers. 2 years passed. I turned 25 and my company grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Then one morning, my HR director walked into my office with 2 applications that would change everything. These applications came through LinkedIn, Rachel said, sliding 2 resumes across my desk. They both have experience, but they're older candidates. Thought you'd want to see them personally. I glanced down at the names. My blood ran cold. Robert Mitchell, Susan Mitchell, my parents. I read their cover letters twice, unable to process what I was seeing. My father had been laid off 3 months ago. My mother's retail job had cut her hours. They were applying for mid-level positions at my company, the company they'd mocked, the company built by their lazy dreamer daughter. They had no idea. I'd kept my company name deliberately vague around them. Tech Vision Solutions meant nothing to people who barely understood what I did. My LinkedIn profile used my middle name professionally. They'd applied completely blind. What do you want to do? Rachel asked carefully. She knew bits and pieces of my family situation, enough to recognize the names. I stared at my father's resume. 15 years of management experience. My mother's listed strong customer service skills and team leadership. Both applications were desperate. Both cover letters mentioned exciting opportunity for growth and belief in innovation. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Schedule them for interviews, I heard myself say. Next week, same day. Back to back. Rachel's eyes widened. Are you sure? Very sure, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I want to be in the room for both interviews. Don't tell them who the CEO is beforehand. She nodded slowly and left my office. I sat alone staring at those 2 resumes. The same people who told me I'd never succeed were now begging for a chance at the world I'd built without them. Justice, revenge? I didn't know what to call the feeling burning in my chest. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That interview room would hold years of unspoken pain, and they had no idea what was coming. The week crawled by like torture. I rehearsed 1,000 different scenarios in my head. What would I say? How would they react? Would they recognize me immediately, or would their own blindness keep them in the dark just a little longer? I told myself this was professional, just business. But late at night, staring at my ceiling, I knew the truth. This was personal. Deeply, painfully personal. Monday morning arrived. I wore my power suit, the navy one I'd bought after my first major investor meeting. My assistant had set up the conference room on the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs, the kind of room that screamed success. Your 9 a.m. is here, Rachel messaged me. Robert Mitchell. My father. I walked into that conference room with my head high. He sat facing away from the door, studying his phone nervously. Rachel sat across from him, professional and composed. She'd positioned everything perfectly so I could make an entrance. Good morning, Mr. Mitchell, I said, my voice clear and steady. Thank you for coming in today. He turned around. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. "I'm Charlotte Reed, CEO of Tech Vision Solutions," I continued, extending my hand for a shake he didn't take. "I believe you know me, though. You raised me." "Charlotte, we didn't," he stammered, finally finding fragments of words. I sat down across from him like we were strangers, like he hadn't spent years telling me I'd fail. "Let's talk about your application," I said, opening his resume. "You're looking for a management position. Tell me about your leadership philosophy." He couldn't speak. He just stared at me, at the office, at the city view behind me that cost more per month than their mortgage. "Mr. Mitchell?" I prompted, letting the silence stretch like a knife. "This is your interview. I suggest you use it." His hands trembled as he reached for the water glass Rachel had placed in front of him. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked with something I'd never heard from him before. Fear. "How long?" he whispered. "How long have you been the CEO?" I finished for him, smiling coldly. 2 years. But I've been building this for 4, since I was that lazy dreamer at your kitchen table. The interview lasted 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. My father stumbled through every question. His impressive resume meant nothing when faced with the daughter he'd dismissed. Every answer felt hollow. Every attempt at confidence crumbled under my steady gaze. "We're looking for someone who believes in unconventional paths to success," I said, reading directly from our company values document. "Someone who supports innovation even when it looks different from traditional career trajectories." "Do you consider yourself that kind of leader, Mr. Mitchell?" He flinched. Actually flinched. "Charlotte, please," he finally broke. Can we talk? Not like this. This is a professional interview," I replied coolly. "I'm considering your application for employment at my company. Unless you'd like to withdraw it?" The silence was devastating. He needed this job. I could see it in every line of his face. The pride that once told me to get a real job had been replaced by something else entirely. Desperation. "I'll be in touch," I said, standing up. "We have several candidates to consider. Rachel will show you out." He stood slowly, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Your mother, she's interviewing at 11. "I'm aware," I cut him off. "I'll see you both soon." Watching him walk out of that conference room felt like swallowing glass and victory at the same time. Rachel returned minutes later. That was intense. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Is everything ready for 11 a.m.? She nodded. "Charlotte, what's the endgame here?" I looked out at the city skyline, at the empire I'd built from nothing but dreams and determination. Honestly, I have no idea. But my mother is about to find out exactly what her lazy dreamer daughter became. The next 2 hours were torture. I couldn't focus on emails. Couldn't take calls. I just watched the clock, counting down to the moment when Susan Mitchell would walk through that same door. At 10:58, Rachel messaged me. "She's early. Sitting in reception? Looks nervous." Good, I thought. She should be. At exactly 11 a.m., I walked back into that conference room, and there sat my mother, wearing her best interview outfit, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell," I said, closing the door behind me with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. My mother's head snapped up. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. Her purse slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. Neither of us moved to pick it up. "Charlotte?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Ms. Reed in this context," I corrected, taking my seat with deliberate slowness. "Though yes, I'm your daughter. The one who'd never amount to anything, if I remember your exact words correctly." She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. But I couldn't let that soften me, not yet. Those tears had never come when I needed them, when I was crying in my bedroom after another dinner table dismissal. "Your husband interviewed this morning," I continued, my tone professional and detached. "I assume he's told you by now that the computer thing I was wasting my life on became this." I gestured around the executive office. "Sweetheart, we didn't know." "That's the problem, Mom. You didn't know because you never asked. You never believed enough to even be curious. I opened her application. Let's discuss your qualifications. You're applying for a customer relations coordinator position? Tell me about a time you had to support someone's vision even when you didn't understand it. The irony wasn't lost on her. I watched her face crumble as the weight of her own words from years past crashed down on her. I can't do this, she whispered, standing abruptly. This isn't... I'm your mother. Sit down, Mrs. Mitchell. My voice was ice. You came here for a job interview. You're going to get one. She sat, tears streaming now. Answer the question, I pressed. Have you ever supported someone's unconventional path? Someone who chose their own direction despite everyone telling them they'd fail? I'm sorry, she choked out. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. Your father and I, we were so wrong about you. Finally, the words I'd needed years ago. But hearing them now, in this sterile conference room, with her desperate for my approval instead of me desperate for hers, they felt empty, hollow. I need this job, she continued, her voice breaking. We both do. Your father's severance ran out. We're behind on the mortgage. I know we don't deserve your help, but... You're right, I interrupted. You don't deserve it. The words hung in the air like poison. My mother sat frozen, tears flowing freely now, her hands shaking in her lap. Part of me wanted to take it back. The daughter in me screamed to comfort her. But the woman I'd become, the one who'd survived their rejection, stayed perfectly still. Please, she whispered. Charlotte, please. Do you know what it's like, I began, my voice low and controlled, to achieve everything you dreamed of and have no one to share it with? To close your first major deal and realize you can't call your parents because they think you're wasting your life? She sobbed openly now. We were scared. We didn't understand. Your father lost his job once before when you were little. We just wanted security for you. You wanted control, I corrected. You wanted me to fit into your idea of success. And when I didn't, you made me feel worthless. Rachel knocked softly and entered, sensing the tension. Ms. Reed, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your 11:30 is here early. James Peterson from the advisory board. My mother's head jerked up at the name. Even she recognized it. James Peterson was a legend in tech investing. Forbes 400. The man who'd believed in me when no one else would. Send him in, I said, an idea forming. Mrs. Mitchell was just finishing up. No, wait, my mother said desperately. Please, just give me a chance to... The door opened. James walked in, silver-haired and commanding in his custom suit. He stopped when he saw my mother's tear-stained face, his eyes immediately moving to me with concern. Charlotte, everything all right? James, perfect timing, I said, standing. I'd like you to meet Susan Mitchell, my mother. His expression shifted through surprise, understanding, and finally settled on something unreadable. He knew my story. He knew every painful detail of why I'd been so hungry to prove myself. Mrs. Mitchell, he said carefully, not offering his hand. I've heard quite a bit about you. My mother paled further. She understood immediately. Whatever he'd heard wasn't good. James invested in me when I was 23, I explained, watching my mother's face. When I was apparently just a lazy dreamer with my head in the clouds. He saw something my own parents couldn't. You built something extraordinary, Charlotte, James said, his voice carrying weight. Despite every obstacle. The emphasis on every wasn't subtle. My mother understood she was being counted among those obstacles. Mrs. Mitchell is applying for a position here, I continued. I was just explaining our company culture. We value people who take risks on others, who see potential where others see failure. James studied my mother with the same analytical gaze he'd once used on my first business proposal. Interesting, he said slowly. And what made you want to work here, Mrs. Mitchell? She couldn't answer. Her mouth opened, but no words came. What could she say? That she needed money? That she had no idea her daughter built this? That she'd spent years crushing the very ambition that created the empire she now needed for survival? I think, James continued, his voice measured and professional, that Charlotte's success speaks to something important. She succeeded not because of her support system, but despite its absence. That kind of resilience is rare. My mother flinched with every word. Some people, he went on, spend their whole lives looking for someone to believe in them. Charlotte stopped looking and believed in herself. That's why she's sitting in that chair, and others are sitting where you are now. I wanted to stop him, but I couldn't find my voice. Part of me needed her to hear this from someone else. Someone whose opinion she might actually value. James, I finally managed. That's enough. He nodded and turned to me. I came to discuss the Singapore expansion, but I can see you're handling something more important. Call me when you're ready. He paused at the door. Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter is exceptional. I hope someday you'll actually see that. The door clicked shut. Silence swallowed the room whole. My mother broke down completely, her body shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deep and wounded. I see it now, she gasped between sobs. God help me, Charlotte, I see it now. I see what we did to you, what we took from you. You can't take back years of damage with tears, Mom. I know, she whispered. I know I can't, but I'm begging you anyway. Not for the job. For a chance to be your mother again. A real one this time. I stood, walked to the window, my back to her. The city stretched below, glittering and indifferent. I'd conquered it alone. Did I need them now? Rachel will contact you about the position, I said flatly. Both of you. By the end of the week. Charlotte? This interview is over, Mrs. Mitchell. Please see yourself out. I didn't turn around until I heard the door close. Then I collapsed into my chair, shaking, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. For 3 days I didn't sleep. I'd sit in my apartment, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and feel completely hollow. Success tasted like ash when mixed with family wounds. Rachel kept asking if I was okay. I kept lying that I was fine. Thursday afternoon, James called me. You need to make a decision about your parents. The team is waiting. I know. What's your heart telling you? He asked gently. My heart is the problem, I admitted. My head says they don't deserve anything. But my heart remembers when they were just Mom and Dad, he finished. Before everything got complicated. I closed my eyes. What would you do? I'd remember that hurt people, he said. And that forgiveness isn't about them deserving it. It's about you deserving peace. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I drove to my parents' house. The house I grew up in looked smaller now, sadder. The lawn needed mowing. Paint peeling on the shutters. Signs of financial struggle everywhere. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before knocking. My father opened the door. His eyes were red, face haggard. Charlotte, can I come in? They sat together on the couch, holding hands like frightened children. I took the chair across from them, the same chair where I used to sit during family meetings. Back when I thought their approval mattered more than my dreams. I'm not here to offer you jobs, I started. My mother's face crumpled. My father's jaw tightened. I'm here because I need you to understand what you did to me, I continued, my voice cracking. Every dismissive comment. Every time you compared me to cousins with real jobs. Every disappointed look when I chose my path over yours. You weren't just unsupportive. You were cruel. We know, my father said hoarsely. Charlotte, we know. We've been living with it since Monday. 3 days, I said bitterly. You've been living with it for 3 days. I've been living with it for years. My mother stood suddenly. Wait here, please. She disappeared upstairs. My father and I sat in horrible silence until she returned carrying a shoebox. She set it on the coffee table in front of me. Open it, she whispered. Inside were newspaper clippings, articles about my company, my Forbes 30 Under 30 feature, screenshots of my LinkedIn, trade magazine interviews, all carefully cut out, printed, organized by date. We've been following everything, my mother said quietly. Every achievement, every success. We are so proud of you. I stared at that shoebox like it was a bomb, articles dating back 2 years, every milestone documented, every achievement they'd never mentioned to my face. You were proud? My voice shook with rage. You collected clippings like I was some stranger you read about. But you couldn't say it to me? Couldn't call? Couldn't apologize? My father's voice broke. We didn't think you'd want to hear from us. After everything we said, we thought we'd lost you forever. So you just watched from the shadows. That's supposed to make this better? No, my mother said firmly, sitting forward. Nothing makes it better. We were wrong, Charlotte. Completely, devastatingly wrong. We let fear control us. We projected our failures onto you. Your father's company downsized when you were 10, she continued. We almost lost this house. That fear never left us. When you talked about startups and risks, all we could see was losing everything again. So you tried to kill my dreams before they could fail, I said coldly. Yes, my father admitted. And instead, we killed our relationship with our daughter. We were cowards. I picked up the Forbes article, where they'd called me a visionary, and threw it back in the box. You don't get to be proud now. You weren't there when it mattered. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then my mother did something that shattered me. She got on her knees in front of my chair, actually knelt like she was begging for her life. Mom, don't... I'm begging you, she sobbed. Not for jobs, not for money, for a chance to be your mother again, to learn who you've become, to support the woman you are now, even though we failed the girl you were. My father joined her on the floor. Both my parents kneeling before me. The same people who once stood over me with judgment and disappointment. We can't undo the damage, Dad said. But we can spend the rest of our lives trying to heal it. If you'll let us. I couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down my face. You hurt me so deeply. We know, they said together. I built everything without you. I don't need you anymore. We know that too, my mother whispered. But maybe you could want us anyway. I looked at them, really looked at them. They'd aged. Stress and regret had carved lines into their faces. They were broken people who'd broken their daughter, now facing the consequences. Rachel's words echoed, "What's the end game?" I stood up slowly. They remained kneeling, waiting for judgment. For rejection. For the punishment they'd spent years earning. Get up, I said quietly. They rose, uncertain. I'm going to tell you both something, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. And I need you to really hear me. They nodded, holding on to each other like lifelines. You're hired. Both of you, my mother gasped. My father's knees actually buckled. But not because you're my parents, I continued quickly. And not out of pity. You're hired because I checked your references. Your former employers gave you excellent reviews. Your skills match our needs. Rachel vetted you the same way she vets everyone. Charlotte, my father started. I'm not finished, I cut him off. You'll start at entry level. Same salary as any new hire. No special treatment. No corner offices. You'll earn every promotion like everyone else. And if you can't handle working for your daughter, the daughter you once called a lazy dreamer, then walk away now. They stood frozen, processing. But here's the other part, I said, my voice softening slightly. Outside of work, we start over. Slowly. Family dinners once a month. You don't get to brag about me to relatives who ask. You don't get to suddenly be proud parents on social media. You rebuild trust through actions, not words. That's the deal. My mother was crying again, but different tears this time. That's more than we deserve. Way more, I agreed. But James was right. Forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I need to move forward, and I'm tired of carrying this anger. I pulled out 2 employment contracts from my bag and set them on the coffee table. Sign these if you agree to my terms, all of them. My father grabbed a pen with shaking hands. They both signed without reading, which made me smile despite everything. Still learning to trust the process. You start Monday, I said, gathering the contracts. HR will send orientation details. Don't be late. I fire people who are late. I walked toward the door, then stopped, turned back. And Mom? Dad? That girl you raised? The dreamer you didn't believe in? She's still here. She just had to save herself first before she could save anyone else. My mother rushed forward and hugged me. After a moment, I hugged her back. My father joined us, and we stood there crying in their rundown living room. It wasn't forgiveness yet. Not completely. But it was a beginning. As I drove home that night, I realized something profound. Success isn't just about building empires or proving people wrong. It's about having the strength to extend grace when you have every right to withhold it. My parents called me a lazy dreamer once. Now they'd work for that dream every single day. And maybe, just maybe, we'd all learn what family really means along the way. Some endings aren't about revenge. They're about rising above it.